Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study. I'm playing the simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in the book of Lamentations, and this book is, you could say, God's expression of sorrow over the outcome of Israel. He had to judge them, and by the way, God often you see this in Scripture. I said this before in other studies, how people mischaracterize God by saying the God of the Old Testament is an angry God, wrathful God in the Old Testament, right? But they don't read that. These are people that haven't either they haven't read the Bible, or they don't, when they read it, they didn't care, because the mischaracterization is that God's just sitting up on the throne angry, just waiting, to just throw down lightning bolts on people. But when the reality is that judgment is always the extreme last thing that God does. In other words, God will say, I'm going to judge you, and then wait some more. I'm going to judge you, and then wait some more, then wait some more. Israel's judgment, keep this in mind, the writings of the prophets started about 250 years before the fall of Jerusalem. In other words, God began to send the prophets, turn from your sin, Israel, but they refused. So you see this over and over again, and if you go in the book of Judges, God would lament over the suffering when nations around them would conquer them, because again of their gross sin. This is always the interesting thing: their gross sin, and God would say, change, turn from your evil way. They would. And when God would see their suffering, because these nations that they wanted to be so much alike were, and that is always dangerous, because man, and David found this out once with, uh, when he sinned against God, and God said, I'm gonna give you three choices. One, 3 years of famine, 3 days that I'm judging you, or 3 months under the hand of your enemy. He said, definitely not under the hands of my enemy. I'll choose God's mercy. I'll choose 3 days of God striking us, and then mercy. Well, you see this in the book of Judges, and all throughout Israel's history. They would fall into sin. God would allow them to be conquered. And in some cases, they would be brutally treated, and God would see that, and his heart would break for his people. So the point is that God does not rejoice in the fact that he has to judge, but he is just. He does not, you know, allow them to continue in sin. But as we can see with this entire book here of Lamentations, that God will, he is lamenting over the condition of his people. In other words, the exile, the destruction of the city. All right, so let's bring this up here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start back at verse 1 again and again. Remember, this is broken down. Each kind of verse is broken down with one of the alphabet letters, the Hebrew alphabet. All right. He said, how she sits alone, the city once crowded with people. She who was great among the nations has become like a widow. The princes among the provinces have been put into forced labor. She weeps aloud during the night. Now remember, this is God looking at Israel. She weeps aloud during the night with tears on her cheeks. There is no one to offer her comfort, not one from all her lovers, meaning the surrounding nations, the pagan gods. So all her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. Judah has gone into exile, following affliction and harsh slavery. She lives among the nations, but finds no place to rest. All her pursuers have overtaken her into narrow places. Now notice it says that she lives among the nations. Now, the Jewish people right now are that way. They are scattered among nations. Very few in terms of a remnant. Even after this um, exile, only a remnant would come back. Only a few people will come back. From this period of time, most have been scattered through all the nations. This is why some of the prophecies says that God is going to fish for them and bring them back into the nation. Okay. Let me go back. I'm going to do this. So I'm going to read as this is the Hebrew letter Aleph, and then Bet, then Gimel, and then now verse 4 says Dalet. It says, "The road to Zion mourns, for no one comes to the appointed festival. All of her gates are deserted. Her priests groan, her young women grieve, and she herself is bitter." And then he, "Her adversaries have become her masters. Her enemies are at ease, for the Lord has made her suffer because of her many transgressions. Her children have gone away as captives before the adversary." Now, this is one thing that people don't always bring out. Notice, why are they suffering? Because of their transgressions. Vav, verse 6. He says, "All of her splendor has vanished in the daughter from the daughter Zion. Her leaders are like stags. They find no pastures. They walk away exhausted before the hunter. Zion, during the days of her affliction and homelessness, Jerusalem remembers all of her precious belongings that were hers in the days of old. When her people fell into the adversary's hand, she had no one to help. The adversaries looked at her, laughing over her downfall." Ket. "Jerusalem has sinned grievously. Therefore she has become an object of scorn. All who honor her now despise her, for they have seen her nakedness. She herself groans and turns away." And then Tet. So again, by the way, if you notice, these were all prophecies that God had said, this is what would happen to you if you did not obey. Verse 9, "Her uncleanness stains her skirts. She never considered her end. Her downfall was astonishing. There was no one to comfort her. Look, Lord, look on my afflictions, for the enemy triumphs." Now, whenever you see the word uncleanness, that it's associated with sexual perversion too. So just think of, well, you may not can think about it, but if you think about just how nasty sometimes sexual perversion can become, okay, and that's what's associated with the term uncleanness. When the Hebrew writer tells them, "Don't let your bed be undefiled," or the marriage bed is undefiled. So you think about the uncleanness. Think about this. When you think about doing in the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s, the the sexual, um, just all over nightclubs, gay bars, what they call bathhouses, and then you see sometimes the diseases that came from that. This would be associated with the term uncleanness. Okay, okay, Yad. "The adversary has seized all of her precious belongings. She has even seen the nations enter her sanctuaries, those you had forbidden to enter the assemblies." Calf. "All her people groan while they search for bread. They have traded their precious belongings for food in order to stay alive. Look, look, and see how I have become despised, lamed. Um, is this nothing to you? All you who pass by, look and see. Is there a pain like mine, which was dealt out to me, which the Lord made me to suffer on the day of his burning anger?" So you kind of switch, you see the thought switch from the Lord looking at their anguish and then turning around, and now, in a sense, Jerusalem is crying out. Okay, Judah is crying out in anger. Meme. Um, he sent fire from heaven into my bones. He made it descend. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He made me desolate, sick all the day long. None. By the way, men, I'm reading these alphabet letters as well. My transgressions have been formed into a yoke, fastened together by his hand, and they have been placed on my neck. Remember, a yoke was like a bar. You would carry things on it, but the yoke was something of a burden, but it was also something used in terms of servitude, to carry, to work. Okay, you would take a yoke and you could couple two ox together and they can work as one. So it was always a kind of a form of servitude. In some cases, bad servitude, slavery. So he says right here, they have been placed on my neck. The Lord has broken my strength. He has handed me over to those I cannot withstand. Samak. The Lord has rejected. Um, the Lord has rejected all the mighty men within me. He has summoned an army against me to crush my young warriors. The Lord has trampled virgin daughter Judah. Now you see these terms. Haven't really got into these particular terms. The terms virgin daughter Judah. These are terms that you also saw in the book of Jeremiah in terms of the prophecies. Okay, just kind of titles that God would give Israel. So virgin daughter Judah. So the Lord has trampled virgin daughter Judah like grapes in a wine press. So again, you see this. By the way, look in the book of Revelations. You see the same, that the uh, the the wine press of God's wrath is being trampled out. You see that image. And I weep because of these things. My eyes flow with tears, but there is no one nearby to comfort me, no one to keep me alive. My children are desolate because the enemy has prevailed. P. Zion stretches out her hands, and there is no one to comfort her. The Lord has issued a decree against Jacob, that his neighbors should be his adversaries. Jerusalem has become something impure among them. Said, the Lord is just, for I have rebelled against his commands. Listen, all you people, look at my pain. My young men and women have gone into captivity. Now, kind of interesting, he says the Lord is just. Everyone will come to see this phrase, or say this before God. The Lord is just. Everyone, even his enemies, even atheists, whatever. At some point, they are all going to come and say this. Right now, people accuse God of not being just because of what they see. And always keep this in mind, you don't have all the information. So if you say, for example, why did God allow this set of people to suffer? Just keep this in mind, you don't have all the information as to why God allowed that to happen. The Lord is just. I have rebelled against his commands. Listen, all you people, look at my pain. My young men and women have gone into captivity. Crew off. I called to my lovers, but they betrayed me. My priests and elders perished in the city while searching for food to keep themselves alive. Now, this is one of the most devastating things about the captivity, the destruction, how famine ravaged the people. If you want to just look at the news today about the conflict that's going on over in the Middle East right now. One of the issues that we're able to see because of news media, the starvation, and it's horrible to see. Okay, so when they express this right here, that Nebuchadnezzar would surround the city and just sit. He let it sit for 2 years. In the case of Jerusalem, he let it sit for 2 years and literally starved them out. They were so weak. Resh. Lord, see how I am in distress. I am turning within. My heart is broken. For I have been very rebellious. Outside, the sword takes the children. Inside, there is death. Shin. People have heard me groaning, and there is no one to comfort me. All of my enemies have heard my misfortunes. They are glad that you have caused it. Bring on the day that you have announced, so that you may become like me. Kind of interesting point of view here, because he said, now people are rejoicing at Israel's destruction, Jerusalem's destruction. We're seeing both sides. On the one hand, you guys deserved it because you did rebel against God. But then to actually see it, to actually see the destruction is it's always hard. It's always hard. Tav, let all their wickedness come before you, and deal with them as you have dealt with me, because of all of my transgressions. For my groans are many, and I am sick at heart. All right. I think I'm going to stop it here because we go into a different judgment, lamentation in the next in the next chapter. I mean, yeah, the next chapter here. But again, it is a hard, when you kind of feel the impact of the emotion here. Like I say, there's you can see both sides. The one side, the one side, um, you could say this person, the city deserved it. They did. Uh, Even at the very end, when Nebuchadnezzar was closing in, they still hardened their heart, which was amazing. But then it's still hard to see the immense suffering, the fact that they suffered, the immense suffering. I mean, to see that, it was kind of amazing here. It was amazing to see that. So, all right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.